Welcome to Graywood Gardening. Well, as the seed starting season is well underway, I thought this would be a great time to give you a tour of my seed starting lair. Now, the entire seed starting lair here measures about 11 feet by 11 feet. And honestly, it's only that big because for whatever reason I have this massive space between these two benches that isn't really necessary. But I definitely love having this amount of space for growing. It lets me grow on these grow benches rather than growing on shelves. Previously, I would grow seedlings on shelves like this with lights affixed to it. And it's a much more efficient use of space, but it's also a little bit more of a pain in the butt, whereas just having everything laid out on a table with the lights above it is really nice. So these grow benches, and there's two of them, one on either side, they're 8 feet long and about 3 feet wide. They very comfortably hold 8 trays of seedlings, but in a pinch, they can hold 12, as you can shove a couple back and get 4 of them on here lengthwise. When I do this, the seedlings on either edge do start to grow in a little bit toward the middle, but I only really need to do this at the peak of the seed starting season in May, and not for very long. So this bench does have more lights underneath, so if I need to, I can grow more plants underneath. Again, that really only happens in May. I don't like having to kneel down to pick everything up. And the other bench just has storage underneath. Now the lights that I'm using here are LED shop lights. They're from a brand called Barrina, B-A-R-R-I-N-A. And these LED shop lights, they're not meant to be grow lights. They're 5,000 K. Ideally they'd be 6,500. But each light, each tube is 5,000 lumens. So, and they come in packs of 6. So this setup of 6 is 30,000 lumens, which is very bright. It's a fantastic brightness because it lets me have the lights up off of the plants 6 to 12 inches rather than having to have them just over the tops of them, which makes it work much better for plants that are slightly different heights and just generally for getting in here and working under them. I like it a lot. I appreciate having the extra brightness. Again, these are meant to be shop lights, so they're actually meant to be just mounted on the ceiling. So I just took a couple of boards, mounted them to the board, and these light fixtures are held up by this pulley system. It's a ratcheting pulley system, so you can yank it up and raise and lower the lights as you need. This system seems to work really good for me. Previously, I had a T5 fluorescent system that was really expensive. And the light bulbs just burnt out. Every year I had to replace multiple of those T5 tubes and then of course safely dispose of the old T5 tubes. So it was great having the LEDs. These ones are a couple years old now. Just nothing burns out, they just work. And this pack of 6 cost $90, I think. So that is the best price I have seen for 30,000 lumens of light. And for starting seeds, you don't need fancy grow lights. You don't need full spectrum lights. Ideally you'd have like 6,500K, but 5,000K is just fine. In fact, old-fashioned shop lights are just fine for starting seeds. So this works really, really great for me. I'm very, very happy with this. And then the shelf in back is just storage, mostly for pots and trays, although we also have our garlic here from last year, which is still going strong. These trays in particular, I love to death. These are super rigid plastic hard trays. They're not flimsy like these black trays. They last forever. They're crazy expensive. I don't actually remember off the top of my head how much they cost, but I only buy like a 4-pack or 5-pack, whatever the minimum amount on Johnny Seeds is each year, because I just can't bear to spend the money to get 2. But I do like these. This is one of the rare exceptions I have for plastic. We're trying to stop using plastic. We're going to use up what we have, but we're switching to paper pots, particularly after last year's pepper pot experiment. But these trays are an exception. They'll last forever. They're really, really nice to have. I also do have this little oil space heater here. The only reason this is here is every now and then I actually run out of heating mat room, and I'll turn this on the lowest setting on this shelf, and then I will set trays of plants above it with their humidity domes on this shelf, and that seems to work pretty good. It gets enough warmth that everything germinates quickly, and as soon as the seedlings come up, I quick pull them off and put them under a light. Now over here on the second bench, it's worth noting that I just this year replaced the lights. This is where the old T5 fluorescent system was. And for this, again, I use those Verena shop lights, but these are 8-foot long versions. So each of these tubes is 10,000 lumens, so across the whole 8-foot bench, we have 60,000 lumens. But I'm able to do it with just 6 lights rather than 2 sets of 6 like I do on the other side. This makes putting it together a little bit easier, but the really nice thing is the 4-foot long pack of 6 lights was $90. The 8-foot long pack of 6 is $120. So this is very inexpensive way of getting a lot of light over a pretty big area. The only real downside is you can't set the lights to 2 different heights like I can on the other side. It doesn't bother me because I do have other places where I can adjust the heights. I also have my heating pads down over here. As you can see, this is where all of the stuff that's still germinated is clustered. And this year I invested in a ginormous 4-foot long heating pad. So it's 4 feet long by almost 2 feet wide. So I can get 4 trays on this heating pad. And in addition to that, I have my 2 single heating pads in back. And despite that, I still have somebody here who couldn't quite fit on a heating pad. All right, so I also have a little shelf here, which mostly has odds and ends on it, but this is also where I have access to my water. So for this, I actually took a lightweight hose and just screwed it into the utility sink on the other end of the basement. Then I used this metal plumber's tape to attach it to the ceiling and run it all the way down over here to the seed starting area. I got this curly blue hose from somewhere, from a big box store. I then just got a simple attachment with an on-off switch. I do have a little faucet nozzle for this, which I got from Johnny's Seed. I don't actually use that very often except for wetting down seeds. For the most part, I just use this as a hose to fill the watering can. But this has been great. One of the first things I did, I'm very happy with it. One final thing that's in here right now is I actually took one of those old fluorescent fixtures and I hung it in a little corner of space right here, and I have the bell pepper plants that I'm overwintering are currently hanging out over here, along with a basil plant that I guess I'm also overwintering. These guys aren't doing great, but they're hanging on. Hopefully they'll make it to June when they can go back outside. So for seed storage, I actually use a big tote under here that has the seeds in it. I will often use like smaller totes like this, just filled with seed packets. But this year I'm trying to get a little bit more organized. And so I bought one of these photo storage containers, which has a bunch of these little boxes meant for storing 4x6 photos, and it's the perfect size for most seed packets. And so I've got at least my veggie seeds sorted in here. I just tossed some tape on it and labeled it. And so this way I've got my greens, my onions, my beans, my herbs, my carrots, my radish, my tomatoes, my peppers. This, at least for me so far, is seeming to be doing a pretty good job of making it not just easier to find the seeds, but also forcing me, after I start the seeds, to put the packets back in the proper place, rather than just what I had previously done, which was toss all of my seed packets in a giant bin like this. And then every time I needed to plant like another succession of lettuce, I was digging through hundreds of seed packets to find the 4 or 5 that I needed. All right, well, thank you for joining me on this tour of the seed starting layer here in the basement. Spring is underway, although it often doesn't feel like it with this regular snow and cold temperatures. Definitely a late spring this year, but it's just about time to start regularly being outside and getting stuff planted. I hope you'll join me for that really soon. Until then, happy gardening.